Welcome to a new episode of the International Comics Collective, only on UCPN. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the International Comics Collective, otherwise known as the ICC. I am your host, Al Mega. I am joined by my brother from the UK, Mr. Dave Elliott.
Hello, hello, hello.
And my other boy all the way from Germany, Mr. Chris Buse.
Hi, guys and girls out there. How are you today?
Yo, this is going to be an awesome show, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Buse had put out an awesome poll out there with a question, a very simple question that brought about a lot of results and a lot of great commentary. Now, the question was, if you can keep only one, meaning comics up to December 1989 or comics after January 1990. Very interesting choices, very interesting stuff was said. I now defer this to Chris to talk about the poll in general, and I guess from there we're going to go into our feelings. Chris, floor is yours.
Thank you, Al. Yeah, we talked about this in the run-up to this episode, and we thought this is an interesting topic we want to discuss with you out there, listeners, and thank you for listening, and all big thanks to all who participated in the poll. And to give you the stats, basically 106 people voted. And we received also a lot of comments, and I'm sure a lot of other people saw this poll. And what we want to discuss today is, first of all, the results, which I will give you in a second, and some of the comments and our feelings, how we perceive the whole thing. So we had these two options, comics up to December 89, which you could keep, at 81% said, well, we want to keep those. And the other ones, comics from 1990 on, 19% wanted to keep those. And we had 106 people voting in the poll. So that's about 100% of the people in our little group who voted. And, well, this is in no way reflective of every fan out there. We wouldn't say that. But it's a nice feedback on this poll. And thank you all again. And we find it interesting. And first off, I didn't vote myself, but I asked myself this question, of course. How would I vote? And I would vote for the first one. So comics up to December 1989, which I would want to keep. And the first thought was, of course, this is the books I grew up with. I read the Marvel comic books of the 60s in Germany in the 70s. That's how I grew up. And that's how I became a Marvel fan. I had all these great books. You know these, Kirby, Ditko, Lee, all the great stuff, Colin. And then I went into DC, great stuff. Of course, I read modern comics, and I still read comics that come out today, but this is a poll. And so I decided for the first option. And to sum up my feelings towards this, upon reflection, I want to read one of the comments we received and also discuss with the other guys how they would have voted. But let me read this comment first. And this comes from our friend Jesse White. If you don't know Jesse, you find him on Twitter under Jesse White Comic, at Jesse White Comic, very easy to find. And the man has an awesome YouTube channel where he discusses lost works by Valley Wood and John Buscema and stuff like that. You should check it out. He really puts a lot of effort into his podcast. So big shout out to Jesse and thank you for the response. I want to read this now. Post-1990 was the aesthetic that ended the era of legit illustrators. The originals do comics as craftsmen with specific knowledge of technical drawing. They were informed by the fine art. Younger artists were informed by copying comic artists and lacked the same technical knowledge. So this is his quote. Sure, that's a mouthful, but it's a good starting point for our discussion. So Dave, how would you have voted, or did you vote?
Well, of course I voted. I mean, I do my best to vote on and read everything you post.
Thank you.
Well, and of course, big fan. You know, that's how we all met, through you, thanks to you.
This is the man.
Yeah, Al brought us together, and the two of us, that was Billy, Dr. Strange. Big shout out to him as well.
Oh, always Billy. Billy's my man. I have probably coming from my background, like considering that I went to art college, learned a little bit of art, and I was always drawing. I've always been artist, and for a while I was making a living as a comic artist before I moved into editorial. And working with Jesse wrote, I agree with a lot of it, but I will say this: I think that the older artists, it's not that they were all had that education they didn't all go to college, but what they did do is they at least learn anatomy. They were inspired by art beyond the comics that came before them. And I think, classic movies. So it was a time, and of course at a time when comics actually paid better than they do today. So, and which
wait a minute, they pay better then than now?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
well, if I don't think I'm giving away any trade secrets of any companies, that the majority of comic book companies probably haven't changed their rates that much since 1990. You've got a lot of companies have actually reduced their rates. A lot of artists are working cheaper now for less money now than they ever have, which I think actually has a big part in this.
Yeah, right.
As an artist, if you're spending all months drawing a comic, you want a decent page rate, because that's the thing that's actually going to pay your rent. It's going to food you. It's going to pay your bills. It's going to put clothes on your kids. Unless obviously a lot of people have two-parent families, two-parent incomes, but it's a lot tougher. And the economy isn't in line with what it was in 1990. The cost of comics, as we very well know, isn't the same what it was in 1990. So, it's interesting from that point that I think what that's done is, as an artist, you have to work faster. You have to find maybe some shortcuts. It's allowed a lot of artists that weren't classically trained, who did grow up, copying Bruce Timm cartoon artwork, and came in the more kind of cartoony style, but where Bruce Timm was their de facto educator.
Originator.
Yeah. So it's that kind of, I think that's when a lot of people look at a lot of modern comics, they miss the detail. They miss the detail that used to be in comics, because it's now lots of textures, a lot of rendering that even the colorist puts in,
and the paper.
Yeah, well, it's if you look at these days, more and more. I mean, the colorists, I really get upset when people don't credit the colorists on comics these days, because so many of these colorists they really do pull the comic together.
They do the heavy lifting. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, when at the dawn, when the first Image comics came and everything was computer colored, a lot of that coloring was just so boring. It was like everybody's glossy. Everybody looks like they're chrome.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right. Totally.
Yeah, and you have these comics, and I'm not going to mention any particular creators' books, but you have these comics where someone has done a splash page or a double page spread, and they'd left room because they were used to working at Marvel. So even though they're now writing their own books, supposedly, they do a double page spread. They leave plenty of room around for copy, because the writer would put copy in and give you more information about the characters and the story. But because they weren't really writers, when it came to actually script it, they'd put there'd be one caption, or maybe a big word balloon saying attack. Gotcha. And it left a lot of empty space. It left, and it made the comics look like they were put together quickly.
It was also the era of the splash page, though, that 90s time. 90s was masters of the splashes. I mean, you could get a whole book and there'd be nothing but splashes.
Yeah, that's also why we made the cutoff point there, because basically one of the persons in the poll suggested as a comment, why didn't you make the cutoff point with 1980, so it's 40 years split in each direction? And we talked about this, and we said, no, we basically want to make the cutoff point with 1990, because most people associate this date with the rise of the independents. Of course, there were independent books before in the mid-80s, specific comics. I read those, fantastic books. But really it came about with the founding of Image. And okay, that happened officially in 92, but there were a lot of things moving in that direction. Those guys started out at Marvel, for example. We knew there was something coming. And if you look at comics really after 1990, they are very different. They're different then, as Dave explained, to the comics today. But everything that's before that time when Image really hit is very different. The modern coloring, the computer coloring that came into play, very primitive in the beginning, as Dave explained, but everything is different in the aesthetics, everything is different from a storytelling point. So that's why we made the cutoff point there. Yeah. So Al, okay, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think the easiest way for me and to split the difference as, pre-1990 and post-1990 is the word professionalism. Or being professional. It's like, as we were talking earlier, and you made a great point about the fact that even just on the writers' front, writers were writing for magazines, they were writing books, they were writing pulps, they were writing short stories. And of course, there was lots of avenues. There was more avenues back then for writers in that respect. And so they came in and they were writing comics. They had a strong grounding. They were used to working with editors, publishers. Publishers had trained editors and editors that had experience writing themselves and working in the industry. But they were publishers who they focused on publishing. It was all, it was a professional business. And with the Image explosion, it was like, we don't need real publishers. We don't need real editors because they're just going to get in the way.
Yeah.
Doing. And if, and here's an interesting, we were talking about the splash pages and those, Image comics being splash pages.
Yeah.
I actually know, I know what at the time, a reason for that is there was a trading card company called Comic Images that Image had, all the Image creators had deals with.
Yeah.
The difference to me is before that, what publisher would allow the creative team to deliberately just do lots of splash images and splash panels and because they knew in their hearts they were going to make a trading card set out of every couple of issues of the comic.
Gotcha. So they already had another marketing strategies behind that alone.
They were drawing their comics to be trading card sets. So they knew they were going to get that extra. They were going to get, they knew this comics were selling well, but that wasn't enough. They wanted that extra market of, hey, we can do a trading card set where everyone's going to get the same images again, but small on a trading card without the word balloon on. And
amazing.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, I don't know about you, but that just cheapens the whole process. I mean, it's like it becomes less of, we're going to try and give you, we're focusing on giving you the best possible comic we can, and it's more of a, the audience is an afterthought. It's all right, how much money can we possibly make out of this comic? Like, if can we chop it up? Like, what other uses can we do? How much of it can we put on T-shirts? Oh, hey, action figures. None of it, and very little thought seems to go into the actual content of the comics, which to me is a great reflection. When you look at Image now, it's not Wildcats and Cyberforce and anything like that anymore. It's all these independent. It's books like Walking Dead and other creator-owned books, and Savage Dragon is way down on the list. Cyberforce is way down on the list when they do come out. Spawn.
And they still come out. I mean, Dragon is out, get 230 something. Spawn is about to hit 300. Nice achievements within them though to keep those going.
Oh yeah. No, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I would say it's like even that instance, Savage Dragon. I mean, I think I stuck with Savage Dragon for the first 100 issues, I think.
Okay.
But it kind of lost me. It just sort of.
It got wild, but at least he's allowed growth with the character. He has a son, and now it's, I guess, a daughter or a granddaughter, because I saw the cover of a little dragon girl. I'm like, huh? I got to start checking it out. There's more growth.
No, see, the thing I like with Eric is Eric's allowed, as far as he's concerned, it's, hey, okay, yeah, I'm going to kill off the character. He's going to be replaced by his son. And it's a growth. It's Savage Dragon, but someone else now holds the mantle to that.
Interesting.
And that's what you can do by being creative. He can make those calls. So he's allowed that development. And who knows? Maybe if I'd stuck with it a few more, maybe another couple of years, I would have stayed with it until today.
Yeah.
But you lost, and it's when you've got a book that's up there at 230 or whatever, and it's hard to get back in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's his create own title. It's definitely hard to find a good jumping on point with those types. Very hard.
Yeah.
Spawn a little different. There's always a change in the creative team or something or direction, which is jumpable. You could jump in. Yeah.
But it kind of defeats the object of being creator-owned. Because if you're a creator-owned company, then, why couldn't Todd just create something new?
Yeah. Well, he's tried, apparently. Haven't done anywhere in the comic side.
Why he's busy with his toys. I mean, this is one man you could say, oh, he's playing with his toys and he's making a ton of money on those. So good for him.
I can't wait to see the McFarlane DC toy line. So I don't know about you guys.
That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But kind of to wrap up what you said about Jesse, I agree a lot about it. I do think the older artists were more informed by fine art, by classic art, by art from other sources. But back to you, Chris.
Okay, let's switch it over to Al. Al, how did you vote? Did you vote?
Absolutely. I'm not going to stay quiet on this one. Yes, I'm a Spawn collector and fan, and obviously that's after the 90s, and I stuck with that. However, if I do have a choice, it's going to be pre-1990, 1989 back, because that's the foundation of my comic history. Someone over here pointed out how he grew up in the Bronze Age era, so there's no way he would be able to give that up for anything, that's going on now. Those are too many memories for himself. So
Totally.
I'm kind of with that. I'm on that emotional element. Too many memories held with books in my lifetime growing up that date back to that. And again, that was also my early beginnings. I was a kid reading old horror books. Again, Conan, Savage Sword, Crystar. I would go into GI Joe and it's easy right back into X-Men. So my taste was diverse growing up. I wasn't just stuck on one thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's just that era storytelling. It's art. It's just I'm connected to it, and I wouldn't let that go. While the '90s, it was a change. It was a difference. Yes, I enjoy Spawn. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out now, but I don't treasure anything coming out now as much as I do my stuff from then, if you will. So my attachment comes more from emotional. Going
Right.
from, I don't know how you guys feel about that. I mean, look at one guy. What was he? Pete Dory. Give up Gerber, McGregor, Engelhart, Starango, Bodie. Hell no. You know what I'm saying? Lee,
No.
Kirby, Ditko. Absolutely
No.
not. You can't give
No.
up guys like that. But however, there was another individual that he said he's a '90s guy, and then he lifted off his '90s guys, which you know what I mean. You can't argue that he's wrong. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's exactly where I wanted to go next. That's the tweet I have, the tweet right in front of me. That's from the man Ensemblist. That's at No Sleep Jemison on Twitter, and he wrote 90s on up for me. Gave up the creators like Alice, Vaughn, Cassidy, and Aja, Marcus Martin, among many others to name. Gave up, I think he wanted to write, Mr. Shelley's best work so far. Any other reason, possibilities for the future are more interesting and full of life than the bones of the past. Let me reread this again. Possibilities of the future are more interesting and full of life than the bones of the past. And when I read this, I was really very much reminded of this sort of zigzag course we have as another property we all know. Think of Star Wars. I mean, we all saw the new trailer. To those who didn't, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but they're apparently going zigzag on that one. Push the new characters or go back to the old characters. Push the new characters or go back to the old characters. They can't really make up their mind, it seems.
Yeah.
And I think what he wants is basically to say, well, basically, you cannot always hold on to the past. These were great stories, but the future offers more possibilities. And there's a lot of great talent, and all of these are fantastic artists and writers. Alice is one of my favorite writers in comics. And
I love Vaughn.
In general, Vaughn is a fantastic writer too. And all the artists he lists are fantastic artists. So I'm really also into the new stuff. I like the idea he's pushing that you can't always go back to the old corpse, or you want to be open to new ideas. What do you think about that, Dave?
Again, I mean, I'm looking. I was reading along with you. I'm looking at it right now. Everything we think of when you talk about Ellis, Vaughn, Cassidy, too many like Aja, Marcus Martin. These are all people who, when you talk about their work, most people are thinking of the work they have done with Marvel and DC characters. And so it's just everything they're doing is built on those bones of the past. I think out of those, I think the two that have given us the most interesting, like Warren Ellis and Garth Ennis, are the two that have really given us something else. They've come up with
absolutely
different ideas, but again, they're built on top of an industry.
Yes. You see that very nicely in the Planetary, which is one of my favorite books or series or graphic novels, whatever you want to call it. And I think the strongest parts of Planetary are basically the juxtaposition of the heroes versus the Four, which is basically a deconstructed version of the Fantastic Four, which would only exist when you know the Fantastic Four. If you read this book cold, you don't get what's behind it. It's basically, you have these four strange characters. Yeah, basically. But they are basically the question, what if the Fantastic Four were evil? And that's quite interesting. And all the stuff he pulls in, this whole series is built on the shoulders of giants. It's not to take away from the great work Alice Cassidy and Laura Martin are doing with the series, but it's built on pre-existing knowledge.
Exactly. Let me point this out. What about Jeff Johns in DC? Right. He is a whiz at bringing out the past and the obscure of DC, into the present. So, I don't really like that comment about in the bones of the past. Let me tell you, them bones still got meat.
What do you think about possibilities of the future? Can there be possibilities for the future without the past?
No, I think that Jeff Johns is a great writer in the context of what DC Comics is right now.
Okay. I think Chris is having a wrestling match over there.
Yeah, he's being attacked by something. You need our help.
No. I heard somebody say there's an echo. It's because I live in a 120-year-old house and I have wood floor on my ceilings. That's why I sound like this. And I've just closed my windows because it's getting cold. But you hear my wood floor. Every time I step on it, it's very old parquet floor.
Oh, that scared me. I thought you were having a wrestling match. That said, the ICC is not turning into the WWE.
Not really, not now.
No, I think Jeff Johns, going back to what we were talking about, I think Jeff Johns is a very good writer for DC Comics and what they're trying to do. Which means for me, and I think that one of the things that I also want to address is, because when we were initially talked about this idea for the podcast, where I was thinking of is, you see, for me, pre-1990 or around that period, was you could still easily get into comics. You could still easily access most comic books. After that period, it became harder and harder and harder to just pick up a comic and read. And
do you feel that because of all the crossovers and the tie-ins?
It's not just those. It's for things like, you see, again, as we already talked about Jeff Johns, right. So instead of just having, you see, here's where I think comics is actually eating itself. And by that, I mean, we cannibalize ourselves. So instead of having just one really good Green Lantern comic, we have to have 3 or 4. We've got to have Guy Gardner. We've got to have John Stewart. We've got to have the Green Lantern Corps. We've got to have Tales of the Green Lantern.
Wait, and did you hear? We're going to have another new Green Lantern book out of the Young Animal line, and she's going to be an Earth Lantern that kind of, I guess, protects that new outer sector that was now created. That since now that the source wall is broken through, whatever.
Well, seriously.
Yeah.
So not interested. Sorry to say.
Yeah, you see, it's for me. I think that. What we're losing is, you see, we're the comics that we grew up with have given away the ground to entry points into comics. Today, if you think about, if you said to me like, well, what are the comics that are bringing in the biggest eyeballs to comics, and it would be, I would say that the company doing the best work is Scholastic, with Raina Telgemeier's like Smile and Sister Books, Amulet, books like that. Even when Scholastic reprinted Jeff Smith's Bone in color,
okay,
they are. Yeah, I mean, even Diary of a Wimpy Kid. These are doing more to bring readers into comics than Spider-Man, the Avengers, which is weird because, we're all eagerly anticipating Avengers Endgame, and yet these mega blockbuster films are not feeding new readers in.
No, because they don't sell to they don't want to sell to the community in that sense. They want to feed themselves and not share in that revenue with the LCSs. I mean, a simple comic book commercial in the beginning of the movie, something shouting out the LCSs there. Even visit your LCS. I mean, Diamond should be working with movie companies if you really want to support the shops that order books. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think the real reality is this. You put an ad, right? You can have a 5-minute ad at the beginning of every superhero comic book movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be a significant, like you might get a short-term bump, but the dip bump will go.
But you got to do it right. You do that commercial, you got to make sure if it's a superhero movie, you know what I mean? Give away, have some free comic books for kids to take, or whomever, a basic fan. You know what would be even more awesome? If you have a local comic shop that could let them set up shop there to sell things like that, get kids interested.
Yeah,
right.
But but that will only work on a very short. That will give you little bumps, because the problem is the content is not easily accessible the way it was back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
What's missing in the content to you?
What's missing in the content is
what's missing? What's missing
is picking up a comic and being able to read it and go, wow, that was cool. And not have to worry about, like, yeah, sure, you might want it if you might try to get the next issue, but it didn't really matter. You could pick up other comics, other issues. But, comics used to be made up of casual readers that would read a lot of comics, but they just wanted to read comics. So if they wanted to read a Batman comic one month, but they wanted to read Superman the next, they wanted to read Sergeant Rock the next, they wanted to,
Sergeant Rock. I had tons of those too growing up, brother.
Yeah. But you see, the thing was, every single one of you go back on all of those, and, some of those Sergeant Rocks were 2 stories in one issue.
Yes. With the ghost tank. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you get the front story by Joe Cuba, backup story by Sam Glasman or Russ Heath.
Oh my God, Glenn!
Great.
Oh my God!
But now you don't have those. The comics that we think of when we think of the comics industry, the comics market. That aspect of it
is gone.
Is not really trying to pull in new readers.
It's gone. Yeah, I see it because I know what you're talking about. You used to pick up a comic and it was a one and done story. They felt like one shots, but you enjoyed it. And at most, the in-house event within its own little line would be 2 or 3 issues max.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So remember what was it? Secret Avengers Alice wrote, where each story was self-contained.
Wonderful.
That was great stuff. Different artists each issue, fantastic stories. And you could read them, pick them up, and read just one comic and be done with it, and have a great story in 20 pages.
I mean, one of my favorite Batman comics of the last 30 years was actually the completely underrated Batman Adventures comic that was started off by being written by Ty Templeton. I think it was Rich Burchett took over.
Batman Adventures?
Yeah, it was based off of the Animated Adventures comic.
Oh, okay.
But Mike Parabek, I think, drew most of the issues. I think Ty Templeton drew the first couple. But
yeah,
beautiful. Well, really well. Like the stories were great. I loved his approach to the first 4 issues of that. The first 3 issues all felt like they were one-off stories. And then you found out that they weren't. They were actually tied into a bigger story that was completed in the 4th issue, which made a nice little trade. But each issue was a self-contained read that kind of that made you want to read the next one. And I just like that sort of, it's being a great writer, working with a good editor to craft a good story that makes you want to read the next issue, but gives you a sense of satisfaction. I think the thing that people want is it's value. And whether you want to call it value for money, but it's value. And when you read a comic, you want to feel, and particularly today when the comics are like $4 or $5 each.
Yes, $3.99 on average.
Yeah, too expensive. Way too expensive.
Every writer is writing for trades.
They are.
And I think if you these days, like, well, if you're going to continue, just write trades, just do graphic novels, because what you're doing is the industry is reliant on people buying the serialization and the trade.
Yeah.
So you buy the same book twice, basically.
Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's the comics industry is an industry that survives, and if everybody stopped buying multiple versions of their favorite comics, they didn't buy the omnibuses. The omnibuses.
I have a friend that. Oh my God! I wish he was here now. He showed me his room, guys. It is nothing but omnibuses. I think this is the largest personal omnibus collection I've ever seen in my life.
Fantastic. And they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Especially the Marvel ones.
That is why he buys them. He says that they look beautiful on the shelf. And he's like, are you going to read them? You know what's funny? No, they're for display. He got the individual issues. So there goes that double buying that Dave was talking about.
Yes, you see, this is the thing. It's a collector mentality. Mm-hmm. People are buying them to collect, and they have them on shelves, and they never get them down. I've been to people's houses where I've seen them all, and they're still in the cellophane on the shelf.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Look at my books. Every one of them is out of cellophane. Okay, I have read my graphics. Because I only buy graphics if I have not collected the book. I'm not crazy. I don't fall for you guys' business. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I do double dip. I buy the omnibus and I buy the digital edition.
Oh,
the classic books. No, I mean, I love to have these omnibuses, especially the Marvel ones. The Kirby stuff. Are you kidding me? That's beautiful. Yeah. I think I'm also going to buy the Conan one, even though I bought the issues digitally. The Barry Windsor Smith stuff. I really want to own that in print.
Oh, Barry, yeah, dude.
See, I'm just as guilty. Like there was a time when I had. I remember it particularly with Kamandi. I'd got.
I had that whole run, bro.
Yeah, I had the whole run. They started doing Kamandi in the hardback archive format.
Yeah,
they did the first book, but they never did a second book. They stopped that. Then they released the trades, the big thick trades. So I had all of those. I still have every issue digitally.
Yeah, that I got at least.
Yeah,
and number one.
Yeah, and then I realized, like, well, why am I doing this? I mean, I think it was around the time that the IDW Artist Edition for the Kamandi came out.
Oh yeah, that was a nice one too.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but it was. I realized, like, I have this in so many different versions. Why?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. So now I'm just down to my Artist Edition, and I have all the books digitally. I don't have any of them in print.
Really? You got rid of them?
Yeah, because they take up too much space.
Yeah, I get it, man. It broke my heart to let go. I had the whole run. I mean, listen, this is why I chose pre-'89. I had a whole run of Kamandi. Whole run of the, if you remember the Secret Society of Supervillains, because I love supervillains.
Oh,
I had that whole run. I had the whole Joker run. Stuff like that. It was just great stuff, man. Can't get away from. And nowadays, you look at it, it's almost impossible because the price point that the speculative market pushes to is almost impossible for you to get back that things unless you win the lottery.
You can read them digital. That's a great thing. I mean, that's a great boon.
Yeah, it's not the same though. I like to hold the book and sniff the ink and get bent on that old ink. Dave knows what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you too.
Yeah, I do, of course. You have these wonderful old ads in there. Fantastic stuff.
You know what it is to me? Listen, guys. I'm sorry. Then you could jump in right quick. I don't want the print book. I don't need electricity. I don't need a tablet. I don't need to depend on anything. It could be a nice sunny day. I could be outside reading my book and not rely on power. You know what I mean? Just me and my book and whatever universe I'm reading. That's it.
Oh, just as long as you don't have a summer shower.
That's what umbrellas are for. You seen that new one? No, let me not start pitching.
Okay, let me get into a new point in our discussion, because basically, as we said, 80% were very quick to say, well, basically, we want to keep the old books, and 20% were the other way around. And let me read two tweets, one that is somewhere in the middle and one that's very clear towards the modern. The first one is from a fella named Indefensible Inc. Indefensible Inc. on Twitter, and he writes, if I am choosing which would be better for culture at large, I would say 1990 to today. There's a greater diversity in a multiple sense of the word, in form and subject and talent in the medium. If you're just talking about my own reading material, pre-1990, no hesitation. Yeah. So he's in the middle, and he brings up the cultural point. And there's another guy who's very clear on that. I will read this tweet as well, and then let's discuss. I would assume he's French. His name is Dr. Paul Ibert. That's with an H, like the French, the H is silent. So it's Dr. Paul Ibert on Twitter. And he writes something very interesting. More contemporary, hands down. Easier to access work from more diverse voices, notable women, and revolutionary developments in the field like comics, memoir comics, journalism, historical comics, biography, graphic, medicine, etc., etc. So he's basically saying, well, basically the more interesting developments, that's how I read his tweet. He can hit me up if I'm butchering his intention there. But his intention is, in my view, that he says more interesting developments in story, in diverse voices, having more women and so forth. Let me add minority characters in comics, also writing, drawing comics. That's an interesting thing. So what do you think?
That minority characters have existed in comics since the 70s, 60s.
Absolutely.
It just wasn't pushed as much because I guess we didn't have social media, pushing the agenda as much anymore, or the media in itself, for news points and whatnot. The diversity has been there. It just maybe it's been underutilized, yes. But, we've had great stuff happen then. I mean, okay, one thing I'll admit, what was it? Dwayne McDuffie in the 90s. He definitely diversified the comic book universe with Milestone, no?
Absolutely.
But if people are clamoring for diversity now, right? Here comes one of the first hugely diverse comic books. Had one of the first trans characters. They did. Milestone. Not Aftershock, not anyone else, not Image, not DC, not Marvel. I mean, that Milestone is technically DC, yes. So, but they had the first trans character. They had one of the first Korean heroes. They had Puerto Rican heroes, black heroes, white heroes. It didn't matter. That was a diverse universe. Now, why are they not here now?
It's a very good question.
All right. Anyway, so I could agree with that on the much more diversity in the work, but then again, there was a lot of women working in comics back in the day. They just didn't get much of the credit, unfortunately, which is true.
Goes all the way back to the 1940s. I mean, we all know Black Widow, but the costume is based on Miss Fury, which was created by a woman.
Yes, Miss Fury. Yep. And somebody actually one day was funny, tweeted out a Miss Fury book, and then they said, "Oh, what was it, Catwoman?" I'm like, "Are you crazy? Do you not know the difference?"
Oh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's so much history. There's a lot of diverse characters. There's a lot of female superheroes and a whole bunch of other superheroes out there from back in the day, going back to the 40s, like Christian said. It's just, again, It's just because of, I think again, it's all the social media craze and all that just makes it more prevalent to want to be pushed. You know what I mean? And make it be seen. But it's been there if you really look for it.
No, I agree. They've always been there. And the problem has been that because of the focus from the 1960s on superhero comics, we've forgotten the great history of so many women who have worked in comics.
Absolutely.
And again, going back to it was a much as far as entertainment, there was a much more vibrant, there was a much more greater diversity of types of entertainment. And so it was, you had a fantastic, like all these women that were cartoonists. They did editorial cartooning as well. Animation. They were also writers. It's funny. I started making out a list of, because I this was something I thought we were going to talk about here. So I started to make up a list, and there's a substantial list of women who've been creating comics, and it was like I stopped looking. I was like, wow. I mean, I'm filling up pages of paper here with names. The problem was they never got to work on. They weren't working on the books that we now have become so popular today, who are still popular today. And a lot like newspaper strips. A lot of newspaper strip writers and artists were women. And again, we've lost the historical, through something not being popular enough, the fact that something didn't make a movie, it didn't make a TV show, so it got forgotten, it got left behind. And I think there's, when we talk about comics, and I think the fact we do consider ourselves international when we talk on these podcasts, I think you can't forget that, like, obviously in the West, I think that there's been a lot of resistance to not to female creators and a female voice in comics.
Oh yeah,
but absolutely.
I'm out here, man. I see it, and people just need to let it go, just to enjoy it. It's so much great work. And fandom is fandom. Who cares where the hell it comes from, man? You can connect to so many levels. It's just ignorance on some part. I just don't get it.
Oh, it is. But I think back and I go and I think to myself, you scratch your head and you go like, well, why didn't Marie Severin have a long run on a particular book? She did fill-in issues. She did issues here and there. Because she was so good at everything. I think Stan tended to, and I may not have this correct, but Stan did tend to use her as, well, you can rough out some covers for other artists to do. You can do fill-in issues when someone needs help. Was doing cartoon, like the not Brand X material, because she could do cartooning. She could do that. But I think it's a shame we never got a long run by Marie on something.
Yeah, that's yeah.
That's true. That's true. She worked on Namor for a couple of issues, though. Yeah,
no, but that's it. I mean, why didn't she get to do the entire run of it? I was thinking that, you've got in Asia, you've got some of the biggest manga artists and again, pre-1990 were female, biggest hits. And I just think that if we'd been more open to women creators, more female creators, I think we'd be richer than we are now. And when you look, and I agree, we have a great diversity right now.
Yeah, we do,
but not enough readers.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's quite interesting, no? That now we have a great diversity and we can't get more readers. That's interesting, isn't it?
Because people are scared and they see social media and they see these stupid and ignorant arguments that go about. It scares any potential fans. It's like, oh, this is how I'm gonna get treated. You know, it's a shame. I don't get it.
Well,
I don't get this gateism that's going on. Cut the crap already.
well,
Right.
I think there's just a in this world today, and it's such a crying shame that in the world we live in today, when we are in the internet age, when all this information is supposed to be at our fingertips, not just in comics, and this is just this is everything. This is everything in our society right now. There's a lack of education. There's a lack of knowledge about actual world events, how things work. When you think that over the last 20, 30 years, so many people have, they're not shown anymore. They don't discuss anymore how politics work, how things actually operate.
Yeah.
We take things for granted, like, when I was a kid, every Sunday, my dad would usually open up the bonnet of the car, be working on the car. He'd fix a tire, he'd do something, wash the car or something. He'd actually he'd be hands-on with something.
Gotcha.
And these days, it's no. You just if your car needs anything, you just drive down to the mechanic. It's usually a computer problem now.
Yeah.
Circuitry that needs to get fixed.
Yeah, I got a computer problem.
Yeah. But it's we've lost the knowledge of actually how certain things work.
Yeah, I would say that's on some people, and I guess that may be generational as well. Because I'm still the handsy type. I want to learn. I'm the one that forces myself. Like, I'm gonna get through this obstacle, me. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's far few in between nowadays.
That also ties in very nicely to another point. I mean, we would be remiss if we wouldn't read a tweet from our friend of the show and friend all around, Doc Strange.
Yeah, the Doc.
That's at Billy Delicious on Twitter, and he writes, "Pre-1990 will win in a landslide." Well, he was right about that. No comparing the eras. One is chock full of creativity, so he's talking about the earlier area, and the other one, not so much. Do you think creativity was lost? And why do you think creativity was lost if you think that? What do you say, Dave?
I agree with Billy. I mean, I usually agree with Billy on a lot of things. But I think that there's a lot of things at play here. Like, when you think about it, Jack Kirby was in his 40s when he started work on Fantastic Four, the Avengers, all of those, all the high points of his life. He was in his 40s.
There you go, people. Remember that number. At your 40s, you still have a chance to become a legend. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, and again, he worked all the way through the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. And we've got a lot of people, like a lot of the artists who come up today are in their 20s, and we're in a market where it's like, everyone's got to try and succeed and as soon as possible and get in earlier. And there's you need to become seasoned. You need to learn. You need to win. You need to fail, and you need to learn from failure. And I know, like, the thing is, like, Jack Kirby will always be my favorite creator. There's never been anyone to touch him. But I also know that there was, he had, had a few turkeys, mm-hmm. And not only that, I think that he's someone who probably had a ton of other ideas that thankfully never actually made it into print.
Yeah.
I remember seeing there was a trading card set of all these ideas he'd worked on for Hanna-Barbera. And they weren't all his ideas. They were other people's ideas. But I went through the trading card set and so many bad ideas. And I know he was paid a lot to sort of like And thank God for Hanna-Barbera actually took him under his wing when he needed work and the money. But a lot of those ideas, and I know they, only a few of them are his, but there was some very bad ideas in there. But
not everybody's gonna have a gem. You know what I mean? All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible.
I think if you go back, like, what Jack was doing is Jack was giving us a ton of ideas every issue of every comic he did, and would often just like these ideas that he would just discard. He would just like drop it, and then boom, here's next issue, another one, boom. And what's been happening is everyone's been going back and like, well, that character that Jack Kirby used for 2 issues back there, let's do an ongoing title based on that. We're going to revamp the character.
Is any of Jack Kirby's stuff in the public domain, or is everything locked tied by whomever, whether it be DC, Marvel?
No, there's quite a bit of work that's actually in public domain that was done in the 1950s. Like most of the Black Magic comics that he and Joe Simon did are in public domain now.
So I propose that you, me, and Chris come up with one crazy idea based on the Jack Kirby thing and go from there. Now, all right. That'll be the only after 1990s comic anybody would ever want to keep. Ours.
But I think the other thing that's missing is that we should bring out and mention is because now, starting really in the 1980s, with Pacific Comics, with Eclipse, even with my own Atomica Press, there was an opportunity for a creator to do work and keep it and own it. And these days, when you look at it, like, why should a creator willingly give their ideas to a publisher like Marvel and DC and not be amply rewarded for it?
I agree with that. Absolutely not. I mean, listen. I mean, when a big 2 company hires you, do they hire you and tell you with the intent that you have to create something new? If they don't, then that's that. So that's that. If you don't gotta bring your ideas to them, you do your storytelling and you have an idea with an OG character, you better do that shit. Listen, I love it right now. This is the indie golden age, and it's all thanks to internet. Anyway, move on. That's another show.
Yeah.
Right. So what is it today with the looking for synergies? Does that have an effect? Because for me personally, I feel more and more of these books become intertwined with the movies, especially on the Marvel side. Has that an effect on you, Al?
Absolutely. Listen, when a character all of a sudden that looks certain one way, all of a sudden starts looking like the actor from the movie, I start getting turned off. Like, please respect the comics. This is where the movie came from. I understand that they're trying to build a fan base. It's still a business at the end of the day, but damn, respect the comic a little bit more. Just a bit more. I don't like that. I don't like when it goes that way. I mean, the comic should be its own separate entity that should not be similar to the movies. That way you give fans a different aspect. If everything looks the same, it's just people just want familiarity, I guess. Not me. Again, we're from a different age. We grew up differently with very diverse and eclectic tastes, across our line of reading. And I don't think kids get that nowadays. You know what I mean? Everything is a brand and it's branded. So here, this is how the movie looks. The comic's going to look the same way now all of a sudden.
Well, I think that's always been there. I mean, if you go back and you look at the changes, even in the 1960s on Batman, like Batman changed when the TV show went on, the comic changed. But
he didn't look like no Adam West, and he didn't act like an Adam West in the comics,
No, but the style, the kind of there was a stylistic change in Batman that kind of echoed a little bit, like even to the,
But in
the
the
Red
'60s, they'd have still the cheesy, the CCA, whatever.
Mhm.
So they would have that cheesy. So I could agree with you there. But once they started kind of shying away from CCA, started getting with the more darker, and still in that traditional garb, I would say. I think the garb is definitely the same.
Yeah, but that started as a conscious decision after the TV show had ended, and Julie Schwartz brought in Danny O'Neill to make Batman dark once again. That also started on the CCA, and they pushed it as far as they could, basically.
Yeah.
I think they were sensing a change in the zeitgeist, and so everything became much darker in the 70s, of course. And interesting. Any more thoughts on the creativity aspect and the synergy aspect?
Well, just on that, I think that it was almost as though DC, when DC went from the sort of Carmine Infantino Batman to Denny O'Neill and sort of like Neil Adams of Novarick, didn't go down that Batman. I think it was almost as though they aged the comic with the read. Figured, well, the person who got that Batman show is now 4 or 5 years older.
Okay.
So let's age up with the audience, and I think that was a trend that continued across both the big two anyway, ever since.
Right.
That's why
interesting.
You had don't forget, like when you think that from 1937 till to the early 70s, Lois Lane was always chasing Superman. She might occasionally suspect that he was Kent, but that was the line. And then all of a sudden he started dating, and then she knows who he is, and then they married.
Yeah.
It's right. I think today they even have a kid.
Yeah, Chris.
Right. Totally.
So it's
another Chris. There you go. Not Chris Buse. Chris Kent.
I see.
but you see, the thing was, and I think probably even a better example was even Peter Parker, who found Mary Jane. It's like after Gwen Stacy died, started going out with Gwen Stacy. They got married. I think for a brief period, wasn't there? They had a kid that disappeared, and that never went back to. They never went back and covered that. What happened there? I think that it's Spider-Man stopped being. When it started, it was I can associate. Here's a high school kid. I'm at school too, or I have a big brother who's going to high school.
Yeah.
Now it's my dad. So you're, but the main readers were dads. They were actually having kids, and now look, Spider-Man. Oh, he's married and got a kid now. Cool.
Oh yeah.
He's back like me again.
I have a lifelong Spider-Man fan as a friend. His name is Hans. Loves Spidey, and he was here this past weekend visiting, and he just mentioned how it's just been. Well, he still buys it because he's a lifelong fan. That it pains him to read lately.
Well, why? Why is that?
Because just the character changes and whatnot. This is not the Spider-Man that he expected, and the kind of the de-aging and then re-aging, de-aging themes and ongoing that just have turned them off, and then you get into the superior. So he hasn't been a big Dan Slott fan, if you will, as well. So all of this is affecting him. He buys it because he wants to, but other than that, he goes, I can't really get back into it right now. He's actually going to take a break while he buys to see if he could read one arc and feel reinvigorated. But he can't, he says. And this has been going on for, 3 years that he has not felt invigorated. Or more than that, actually.
See, it's interesting because I remember when I was buying everything. I can remember back when I was buying every comic. And every comic would have a run. It might even last as long as a year where you're buying it because you have fond memories of the character and the previous arcs.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for that new creative team to come on to rekindle your love for the character again.
Yeah.
But you're still buying it, you're still reading it, but it's kind of like, yeah, it's not supposed to be. And it was, I remember when I got to a point where I first started dropping comics. There was a point for a long time I was buying everything. And then there was titles where I thought, don't make me fire you. This isn't going anywhere, and it really pains me. I'm going to have to stop doing it.
Yeah.
And and that moment, that instant, I went through my comics and I decided I didn't just drop one title. In that one day, I think I dropped about 12, 15 titles, because once I dropped one, it was so easy for me to then go, well, why am I buying this one then?
Yep.
And if I'm going to drop that one, then I might as well drop this one then.
Yeah.
And then if I'm going to drop this one, I'm going to drop this one, and this one, and this one.
Buy what you enjoy, not just for that rekindling. I get that very much. And I was also in the same trap for a while.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
But the downside, but that was the year, and literally it was 1 year where my reading went down from 60 comics a month to like 10.
Wow. Damn, that's crazy.
And it's just like, it was like, it became every month it became easier to just like, oh, this comic. And then I started selling my, I started only pulling out the issues in a run that I actually liked. So I would take to my comic store all the for credit to get, I would go like, well, okay, I don't like anything between this issue and this one, so I'm going to keep these particular runs because I like them. Everything in the middle, which I'm never going to reread.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is I was taking them back, and the credit I was using to buy action figures, art books, and T-shirts.
There you go.
Right. Guys, who's there on the other line? El, do you have a TV on or something? I mean, I get all this noise in the background.
No, I don't hear anything. Do you?
Dave, is it?
Yeah, it's
Dave,
not my line. No.
Okay, so it must be my line. Are you hearing anything in the background, or is it just my line?
I don't hear anything.
Yeah. It sounds like somebody's got TV on in the other room.
Yeah, that's exactly what I keep hearing. Is that the line? Can that be the Skype line?
Maybe, but the software I use cleans up all those hums and whatnot. So no worries.
Okay, because basically it sounds like there's a TV on. Basically, very loud. Now it's gone. Basically, okay, cool. I have another tweet I want to read because it also basically ties in with another theme I want to raise. It's from Pat at Staffanes on Twitter. Wow, tough cutoff date for me. I started 88. Early 90s stuff would be great, but anything after 2000 is essentially useless to me. We'll deliberate. So I'm not sure how he voted, but basically what I wanted to raise here is, so he started apparently reading comic books in 88. That's about 18, 20 years later than when I started. So I would assume he's in his 30s.
Yeah, right.
So he's a fairly in-between guy because a lot of us are in our 50s, 40s. So he's one of, I would say, quote-unquote, newer readers. And still he would go for the older stuff, most likely, because he said, well, anything after 2000 is essentially useless for me. So that's where he is at. My question is, what would you do to get new readers on board? I mean, we all hear about the industry dying. There's less and less sales. People don't want to check out comic books. What would you do? I mean, format change. Dave raised this topic a lot in the other podcasts. That he said, well, basically get away from the floppies, have like graphic novels coming out. That is one option. What would you do to get new readers on board? What needs to change? What would you do?
Me, shit. It's all marketing. You gotta create excitement. You gotta tell people this is what's popping. Check this out and create a fun environment. The thing is that it's difficult as well because it all depends on what type of character are you creating here. Because everybody nowadays is sensitive. I was watching American Gods over the weekend, and the character, the spider, Anansi, he said something very because somebody was annoying him and was getting kind of offended, and he was like, "Sensitivity is such an unattractive quality."
That's very true.
And you know what?
Very
Yeah,
true.
you know what? I agree with him 100. Sensitivity is very unattractive because it doesn't allow for freedom of creations for something for you to enjoy with an open mind because you're too quick to judge. So
Interesting.
I think that the first thing, if you want to see this grow, is that people need to let go and be open to ideas, no matter what they are. Just check them out on the basis of just checking them out. That's it. I mean, I would even check out stuff from people I dislike if I had to. If they're telling me there's a great product, I can't hate on the product, you know.
Right. Totally.
So people used to need to let go, just open up their diversity, and creators need to just promote and show the love and let people know of the existence of their projects. I think I don't know if they would agree or just again, but also when you're under your publisher, there's certain things that creators can't do, whatever. I guess if that's written into any contracts, but I think it's just a promotion. It's showing people the importance of comics, how awesome comics can be. The great messages that can come across. I don't know what else to do. I mean, I'm trying to do it through CC by showing how diverse comics can be.
Yeah, I think I just think that we have to be open to more formats, keeping it to a point where you've got to be able to let the audience in, and I think the majority of your titles should be open so that people could enter easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that you can't tell a story in 20 pages anymore, you need 40, then double up the pages. I don't think people would mind paying an extra $1 a book if the comic went from 32 pages with a 20-page story to 48 pages with a 40-page story in.
Absolutely not. Listen,
No, totally not.
If I'm paying $5, I don't want to read the book in less than 15 minutes. I want to if I'm paying $5, give me a half-hour read at least.
Right, yeah, totally.
I mean,
give me a good story first of all.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I loved that. Like, I know it didn't work great for them at the time, but when DC was doing its 100-page, giants, because they wanted to, they knew they had to put the price up, so they would be half new material, half reprints. Some really golden age material was in there. You had some great Dick Sprang stories being reprinted. Some, that was like a really great time to sort of see both new and old comics.
So I'm going to make you happy because they've been doing that with Walmart, right? But now, because of how fans have been reacting, DC is reacting, and they will now be distributing these outside of Walmart to every local comic shop. So
that's good.
Good. People will get to experience once again these very oversized comics, like you mentioned, that have new and old stories. So you could, collect the new story while getting put onto some old glory. You know what I mean? And
that's a good idea.
And they're decent. I was lucky enough to find it in one of my local Walmarts because I hadn't been finding them because apparently comics shops buy them all up and sell it for $2 more at their stores. Yeah, if you believe it. Yeah,
I can believe it.
It's a scam. It's not right. But I was lucky to find a few issues, and I picked them up and I flipped through them, and it definitely brought me back to that old school feel as I, flipped through it, and it's 100-page giant and it just looked great. I was very happy. I picked up the Wonder Woman, the Batman, Superman, Swamp Thing, and Teen Titans. And my brother in Pennsylvania found for me issue number 1 at his Walmart.
That sounds cool. That sounds
Yeah,
cool.
I can't wait for the Batman one.
Well, again, I will argue with you on that, in that, what if they actually did those books, those Walmart books, where each one of those books was actually self-contained, so that you didn't have to buy the next book because from what I've seen of them, all of the stories in there, yes, they're reprinting older material, but it's still like issue 1 of a mini series that was printed, say, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So you had to buy the next issue to get the second issue. And I think if you're doing 100-page giants, then why not put
one in those
2
stories?
issues? Like if there was a 2-part story, that, say, there was a really cool 2-part story that ran in Wonder Woman 10 years ago, put that in as a single 40-page story.
Gotcha.
So, maybe there's a story in the back. Like, I'll give you a great example from Detective Comics, where you had that great Archie Goodwin, Walt Simonson Manhunter story.
Oh, yes, Manhunter. Yes.
Yeah.
That was great stuff then. Yeah.
Right. But that was running in those 100-page giants, where that was the only story that was continued throughout them. Everything else was standalone stories.
Okay.
So you had something continuing that went through it. But even then, each of those short stories was kind of self-contained at the same time. But you knew it was a continuing story, but it led you on. So there was no sort of, you didn't feel disappointed, like, oh man, like turn the page and it was like, oh, it's cliffhanger. It's like each chunk of it was contained, but it was leading you on a quest further off. And I think that's what's needed. That if you really do want to bring in a bigger audience, because there's the way we digest entertainment. Comic readers have pretty much, we've been basically taught to read comics a certain way.
Yeah.
But if you don't read comics, if you're not a comic reader and you just read books and magazines and newspapers, you read differently. You read completely different. And I think, the binge watching of Netflix and things like that is changing the mass market's way of
absolutely.
Totally.
But it's still, you see, binge watching, it's like, okay, we're going to release the entire season in one, and you can watch as much of it as you want. And I think that, again, that's not something that comics can do. You can't release 12 issues of a comic all on the same day unless you do it as just a graphic novel.
Although that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we attempted that.
Well, TKO is a publisher that they recently just launched, and they had some they've got some great looking books. A beautiful one by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting.
TKO, I gotta reach out to them.
Wow.
Yeah, but what's interesting, what they do though, is they release all of their books in all formats at the same time. So if you've got a 4-issue miniseries, it's released as a 4-issue miniseries, but you can also get in a trade, and you can also get it all digitally, all at the same time.
Oh.
And it kind of makes me scratch my head. It's like, well, and on their website, by the way, you can download the first issue of each of the comics for free.
I'm seeing this: Sarah, the fearsome Dr. Fang, the 7 Deadly Sins, Goodnight Parasite. But I mean, with talent, like you said, Ennis, Epting, Joshua Dysart, Z Shun, Daniel Miwa, Dan McCade. Holy smokes, Jeff Lemire.
Yeah, great lineup of talent, great looking material. So I would question then, in this case, if you're giving away the first issue for free that gives you a taste, why offer it as floppies in a box? Because it's a beauty. I mean, it looks beautiful. Here's the 4 issues, and they do it in a nice box.
I see.
So you can stand it on the shelf, and artistically and aesthetically, I get it. I can understand it's always offering it in beautiful formats. But I look at it this way. If I'm the creator, and like someone like Garth Ennis is probably going to sell the same amount, whether it's, if you take like, well, how many people buy it as the 4 issues? How many people buy it as the trade?
God. So you think that's the experiment here?
Well, I think it's great to see people experimenting. I always love it when people they try things, because somebody can do something and it clicks.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's always opportunity. I mean, I will say, the fact, I remember when Barnes and Noble decided to embrace, and Borders Books decided to embrace manga.
Oh yeah, man, that changed the game for them, boy. And those sections are amazing, by the way.
But that changed the game for the entire industry, particularly in North America, because American comic books, had already tried to get into Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, but in the floppy format, that was their mistake. Yep. Yeah.
Oh no! Before that, they'd actually tried getting in trades and books, and they failed. They actually closed it down. It just wasn't selling.
Oh my God!
Then manga came along. Manga blew up and was so huge that Barnes and Noble actually looking to increase the size of the comic section. And because they wanted to give it a lot of space to fill it, they started taking American comics again. Comics again. This time they succeeded. And I think one of the reasons it succeeded is parents or maybe dads were taking their kids to Barnes and Noble so they could buy some manga. And while they were buying manga, the parents
were
on
looking
the
at
side,
Batman, Marvel, DC. Like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, and they started buying them. And I think and again, what manga did was manga brought in a huge female readership, which later a lot of those women moved to buy. They went round and started reading regular American comic books.
Yeah.
So, in that regard, I think manga saved the comic industry, or helped the comic industry twice.
Well, what is it? I gotta ask you then, bro. As a publisher, bro, what is it about manga that attracts the female base so much more at that time period, especially?
Well, I think what it was fresh, it was different. You didn't need, when you buy manga, you're not having to buy every other manga that comes out to get an idea of what's going on.
Gotcha.
So, you kind of look back at the 60s. Yes, a character may appear in another character's comic, but they were never a crossover. What they were they just guest starred, and it wasn't an important, there was nothing happened that made you need to buy that comic. Every comic had to survive on its own. Yeah. Do you remember when we started to have things like what we get? We still have, it still happens today. It's a comic's not doing too well, so we have to have Batman show up. To give it sales.
Batman in 1 and 2, Marvel gets Wolverine or Deadpool.
Oh yeah, do you remember when Punisher was almost in every other comic?
Oh my God, growing up, Punisher was everywhere in the 90s with the War Zone and all these other books. Then he was in every other Spider-Man issue, X-Men even. I mean, what would have happened if Punisher was in the Captain America Scores storyline that Grunwald was doing? That would have been fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Scores versus Punk.
So with manga, you can pick the comic, the manga you like, and then just buy the volumes of that and not have to worry about anything else on the shelf.
Yeah.
But the thing was, the characters were usually younger, Again, it was fresh, and the thing that manga proved to me, that the thing that everyone that's lost on so many other people is not everything has to be in color. Like I know from like I have 2 kids of my own, and when they were young, they would read manga, they would read my American comics. It didn't matter. It was just a comic.
Yeah.
They never once said to me, "Oh, Dad, this looks a bit old." It was a comic. That's it. They read it, whether it was a big black and white essentials showcase book, or Marvel Essentials, or when I remember when the first Thor movie was coming out, and my daughters were both curious, like, so who's Thor and what, I said, like, okay. I gave them 2 graphic novels to read. One was the Walt Simonson Omnibus, and the other one was Tales of Asgard by Jack Kirby. It never occurred to them that they were written and drawn like 25 years apart. They just read them, loved them both, and there was never a thought. Because so many people in the comics industry, particularly in the sort of publishers and editorial, grew up in comics, there's this thing that we just presume that everyone's like us. Everyone wants a glossy comic that's in color. That's what we like, so everyone's got to have it. They don't tend to think of, well, no, kids are fine with black and white as long as it's strong and engaging artwork and good story, great characters that they can associate with. I think that's something we're definitely missing.
Totally. I see the same way. I mean, we talked about this. Elle especially keeps mentioning those Savage Sword of Conan books. I mean, I remember reading those when I grew up, and it didn't make a difference to me that they were in black and white. They looked even more interesting in black and white. And why not? Could be interesting.
That was a great period for Marvel when you had, Dracula Lives, you had Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, you had Doc Savage.
All those 70s makes amazing stuff. Right? Amazing. I remember reading this bizarre adventure with Black Widow and the Daughters of Dragon in the artbook.
Oh my god!
Amazing stuff.
Jesus.
Yep.
You're gonna make me go to my LCS because he has the box full of the Savage Swords and some Deadly Hands. You guys are gonna make me go over there. Stop it.
Yeah, and what's so interesting now that Marvel has the license back, they're putting up the Conan, Savage Sword of Conan books digitally, but not the Dark Horse omnibuses. They pulled those. Now they're putting up the single issues, so you can go back and read single issues of Savage Sword of Conan if you want to digitally.
Yeah, I got every issue digitally, Chris. But one thing that annoys me right now, okay? This is the current situation. They do have the standard Conan comic with the new numbering, as the new number 1. However, there is a legacy numbering to it. Okay. Now, they re-released. They also did the Savage Sword of Conan, right? Mm-hmm. They're also doing that with legacy numbering, but a standard size.
Oh, really?
I don't want a standard size Savage Sword. I want magazine size.
Yeah, that makes much more sense.
To both of you guys, if there was nowadays a magazine-sized comic book like our Savage Swords from back in the day, would you buy it at the stands?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd probably be even more likely to buy something like that than a regular comic.
Yeah, there's people that tell me, it's dated and stuff. I'm like, no, it's not. I think it makes it. First, you feel like you're holding something, and just those stories, I mean, if you go to Deadly Hands, it was just more than just, a white tiger story. You also had the Daughters of the Dragon story. You had
Yeah.
you had interviews with kung fu masters, which was insane at the time. Because obviously that was the craze then. But we could utilize whatever the craze is now and tell those amazing stories in that black and white art. I missed that. Again, that's how my Puerto Rican hero got his first start in those big black and white magazines. I mean,
Absolutely.
White Tiger did not see color until Spectacular Spider-Man. And in that storyline, he winds up getting shot and killed by cops. Of course, Puerto Rican.
Oh, typical. Yeah, very topical actually now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because you see, at the time, this is, if we get into sort of production for a little bit, at the time, black and white comics were much cheaper for the publisher. It was obviously they didn't have to pay for the coloring. It was on newsprint. So they and then it was genuinely cheaper to print something in black and white than color. Yeah. Today, printing something in color or black and white is the same cost.
No way. Are you shitting me?
Yeah, it's pretty much because so much printing now it's been done for so many years now. Everything's been in color. So if you have something to print in black and white, if I said, do you know what? I want to print this in black and white and I want newsprint.
Yeah.
That will cost me more money to print than a glossy color.
Wow. You're shocking me right now, bro.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
Here's why. Because they will have to now go out and find me that paper, because all they will probably have is the glossy stock paper.
That paper's there. It's from newspapers. Cut out of here. Come on, yo. I will argue, man.
Print it. See, the thing is, most the newsprint of comic books used to be the same as some newspapers, but not the newspapers today.
Oh, really?
So there was a little bit more bulk to it then.
There's a change in the paper.
Yeah. So and the print costs are the same. It's today because it's no additional cost. The big cost used to be that the plates were all it's the cost of making plates and the films. Yeah. So every page of comics was basically 4 pages of film. We don't need any film anymore. So that's purely that. The elimination of needing film to produce plates to print from saves a publisher somewhere in the realm of about $60 a page.
Oh,
that was $60. That was a $60 a page cost eliminated. Boom, gone.
Damn, I do not blame them. All right. I mean, do you, Chris? You're an entrepreneur.
No.
You blame them?
No, that makes total sense to me. That makes total sense to me. Problems also. Wouldn't your readers go into a comic store, or would they read digitally? And that is the next question. Do you think that we now get this CC Direct with all the downloadable and readable content? They're putting up digital comics on a subscription basis. Do you think that will make a difference?
Maybe for new readers, but not collectability.
I don't think. How many new readers do you think you'll honestly get? Because, and we've found our comics on spinner racks in places like drugstores, local corner news agents.
But Google's now that new spinner rack.
That's true.
Yes, but how many? Why would you see that? Unless you go looking for comics, how would you find comics?
Well, that's the whole thing. Once you search comic books, you got a diverse choice of comic sites that offer digital comics, which you're going to look. Some offer the big 2 stuff, some offer the premiere stuff, some offer the indie stuff, some offer everything from all 3.
Why would you go Googling for comic books unless you see you when you went to a drugstore or corner store, it would be like in England, we always had the little corner news agents that would sell your newspapers, comic books,
that's
candy.
That's where my Savage Swords came from.
Yeah,
from a newsstand in Brooklyn.
I might even be able to get pints of milk. My parents would get their cigarettes from there.
Yeah, they have all that shit. Just milk, soda.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Candy, comics, magazines, and porn.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff. Yeah. But so what I was going to get at, your dad, your parent, one of your parents would take you in. They're getting their cigarettes or their newspaper.
Yep.
You would see the comic book and go, "Oh, Mom, Dad, could I have this?" And they'll go, "Oh, how much is it?" "Oh, it's 10 cents, 50 cents. Okay, yeah, sure, you can have that." Where is the kid seeing the comics to even make them want to Google comic books? Other than, "Oh, I just saw Spider-Man. Apparently it's based on a comimic book. Let me Google it."
That's going to happen, though. A lot of people find it like that nowadays. The new generation, because not every parent, had collected books and whatnot. So when they see a show or something, because I have a niece and nephew in Florida that basically they see a commercial and they start asking questions after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, okay, what's this?
Yeah, but just think about it though. But as again, I would go out buying my comic books with my pocket money.
Oh, absolutely. That was different. We were different.
So now, today, if you're a kid, like, you don't get to have a credit card. So you've got to have your parents do it.
Yep.
So if you've got to buy digitally, you've got to have an account which your parent has to set up for you.
True.
It's the barriers to actually finding and purchasing aren't the same.
No, they're not. I mean, I remember growing up when I did, there was tons of shops where you could find books. There was a laundromat that had a basement where it would sell comic books, and Mike Carbonaro's Continental Comics back in Queens, Bedrock Comics in Queens, Pete's Comics in Brooklyn. I mean, I had areas to go to find it, and then obviously conventions, because when we go to the shop, they had a flyer. All of a sudden, based on the flyer, we go into the con. There was no internet back in the day, people. So to find out about a con wasn't easy.
Yeah, but remember in the old days, you went to the newspaper magazine section in the supermarket and you saw the comic book. So, "Oh, this is how I'm going to buy this." I haven't been to a magazine section of a supermarket in like 15 years because all the stuff I read is digital. I don't buy a newspaper. I read the stuff online. So basically, putting the comics back into the stores is not going to help because people don't go there anymore.
Yeah. So I think,
look at Alterna's approach, though. They're trying to do this whole joint where they want to get their books, kind of, in that checkout section, similar to the magazines.
All right, I see what you mean.
So
where you have US Today and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Because people still go to the supermarket. You still gotta buy food. So it's product placement.
Right. What I was thinking is, do you think because I've just checked the lineup of the publisher Dave just mentioned, TKO Comics.
Stuff, right?
Really interesting stuff. It's the first time I've heard of this. Do you think publishers, especially smaller publishers, should work closer together with comic book sites like yours, like Comic Crusaders? Should they really help each other? Should they go actively?
Absolutely. Listen, they do.
Yeah.
Listen, Chris, they're doing their thing. Why not reach out to a positive comic press that likes to support independent to be able to, promote their product? Why not? And if you reach out even further, I could do sidebar ads, but the whole thing be able to reach out to us so we could preview your books and show the people side by side with a big two or premiere book. Look how this stands. I mean, this is just as awesome. Why wouldn't you check it out? And I do that purposely on my site. I want indie to stand as strong as with any big two or premiere book. And when I say premiere, I want to elaborate because there's definitions. Big two is DC and Marvel. Premiere is Dark Horse, IDW, Image, Dynamite, and Boom. And then anything outside of that, even Archie, which has been around for decades, is still considered indie.
Yeah, because they have virtually no market share.
Exactly. So it's Archie, Titan, Aftershock, Vault, Atomica, all on the indie level. So I want to put those books side by side with those big two in premiere to show people that, hey guys, look, this could stand side by side with this stuff. What you need doesn't need to come from the big two. It exists outside of that if you're willing and open to accept it. But that's just me. I had an interview with Comic Central, and I'm preaching the same thing that, if you want the diversity, if you want the X amount of books with X amount of characters or X type of characters, guess what? It exists in the indie world. Stop trying to force the big two to do it. Stop trying to go with the branded and help these independent creators push their product that you already want.
Yeah, but it all comes down to, where is the audience for them going to come from? When, we know that sales are down across the entire North American industry.
Yeah.
It's, let's be honest.
It's graphics, not floppies. It's graphics.
well, all these variant covers that Marvel and DC keep doing.
Disgusting. I hate
they
that.
They're only doing it to keep their sales up. That's it.
I mean, Batman Detective Comics 1000 had, I guess obviously in honor of the issue he appeared, 27 different variant covers.
Jesus.
Yeah. How many did Superman 1000 have?
Oh my God, numerous. But this is across the board. This is across the board. I mean, on many publishers that they have to do this variant cover nonsense. I mean, I love Valiant, you know what I mean? But geez, dude, they do 5, 6, 7 covers. What the hell? Stop. I don't do all that. Listen, the interiors are the same. That's all I really care about.
Right. But you see, the point is they're only doing that so that people who are fans are buying multiple copies. But then you're talking about, again, you're cannibalizing your own publishing company, because if you get to the point where it's like, wow, I want to get, I want to buy as many of those Batman covers as I possibly can. What am I not going to buy to get them?
Yep. So I mean, that detective was what, $9.99?
Yeah,
Jeez.
Crazy. It's $10 on a comic book, dude.
And that's for the regular covers. There's a lot of people who had their own exclusive covers.
Oh yeah, going for $20, $30 at an LCS, insane.
Yeah. I mean, I just see this as I just see what they're doing is I don't know how long it's sustainable. I see this and I just think, all you're just trying to do is you're trying to milk something.
You're repeating the 90s mistake. You need to stop before you crash and burn.
But that's total desperation, I would say, because they have only so many readers and so many retailers, and the retailers are dying basically. So they have to raise the prices and push and push and push.
All right, but what's going to save the industry? So if the retailers are dying because they're not getting maybe the local support. I do see I see it every week. I see at least one comic shop that's getting closed, which is sad. I mean, what can be done to help the LCS exist, or does comics really need to now sell outside of an LCS? Take that shit out the way and go back to newsstands and distribution through like Walmarts and Targets and whatever else is out there.
I would recommend that every comic book store basically become an independent bookstore. So they stop thinking about just comics. In fact, they should move away from the floppy completely. Everything be trades, graphic novels.
Yeah.
Have children's book sections. Like if you know the types of genres people like, start to put books in your store. Sell whatever you need to, like T-shirts, toys, candy, soda, whatever you think. Like, get to know the town you live in. get to know everything that surrounds. Hey, there's a few comic shops that have actually having great success by becoming a coffee shop as well.
Yeah.
People coming in, they're buying a cup of coffee, sitting there, and they're like, oh, have that thing where people can come in for a coffee, have comics on every table for people to read, and maybe something like that will spark them to go over and buy something.
Yeah, you're going to create a sense of community that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's publishers should I would hire someone. I would literally hire someone and say, like, okay, I want you to go through you do a Google search for every barber, every place that cuts hair, call them all up and say, if I sent you some comics, would you put them on the table where people can read them?
Yeah.
While they're waiting. Because I used to do that when my mum used to take me for my haircuts. I got to read like 3 or 4 comics before it was my turn to have my haircut.
And that's a great way to introduce people as they're waiting for something. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why not? I agree with that. But it's again a sense of then, is that the responsibility of an LCS or an individual creator to go to these, shops like that, for example, and distribute their product to put people on?
Well, it's up to you. If you want to sell something, the days of just because the industry has, we've seen such a loss of readers. I think we're at that stage where your comic, you have to go and find it.
Is that the case? Is that the case? Because basically, if today, if I want a comic book like these TKO books, I was just looking at them. Steve Epting, wow, fantastic! I can have it immediately. I buy it digitally. Yeah. I think that's the way the future is the comics are going to survive. I mean, it's sad for the local stores. Absolutely. But
I want to point something out though to you.
Right.
This is why I'm adamant about owning in print, because you buy digitally. Do you know that at the end of the day, you're not really owning that book, because if they choose to cancel your subscription, you don't have the book.
I don't subscribe. I buy them. So I buy the right to read them.
Do you download them, though? Are they outside
absolutely.
of your system? Because
no, they're not outside. They're not outside the system. I could, because Image and some others offer these IM-free options, but I don't care for those. I download them in the system.
Yeah, make sure you download them, because they can block your access for them. So for those of you that don't download your books and you keep them in your digital library as opposed to just downloading them and owning them outright, don't make that mistake. Please download them. There's been cases where people have been banned for doing stupid shit, and unfortunately they get revoked access, and every dollar you paid for those books is gone. You have nothing.
Really? From whom? I mean, I don't want to... from Comixology?
On consumption, everything you have in your library, have you not downloaded it, where you can access it outside of the system, it is not really yours.
No, I'm not buying the book. I'm buying the license to read it.
Exactly, just a license to read it, and they could revoke that license, and which is the problem. So this is why I am adamant about print. You own it. Who's going to revoke that unless somebody comes up to you in the street and, slaps you to read your book or something, which I doubt would happen. And if they do, I hope you're a ninja master.
Yeah, but it can also happen. I mean, there can be a flood in my house and all the books are destroyed. I mean, there's always ways to
true, but I don't know. I protect my books in a way. I put them on pallets. I'll try to avoid.
Okay.
I'm an ass. I'm crazy. I'm very protective about my material stuff. And yes, that can be lost too. But the fact that in a digital license, though, is like you said, you're licensing. You're not really buying.
No, that's right.
Really. Well, really, look. No matter what format it's in, there's the possibility of losing it. you can download it, but your hard drive crashes. It wasn't backed up, gone.
Google Drive, you cloud stuff, guys.
Oh yeah, it's like, look, I have 3 separate hard drives with everything backed up, or everything I have backed up on all 3. I've got a ton of stuff on the cloud. So, but still, there's still, there's a possibility that one or one or more may get corrupted by something. Floods, or you get to that point where you might have to downsize your house. And if you're a long-time comic collector, half your house is your comic collection.
Yeah.
There's no set way. There's no infallible way of keeping your comics. I think that, and again, I think, if you take a subscription up, so if you're subscribing to Marvel or DC's online services, or Comixology, I mean, there's a certain amount of comics that you're going to read you will never read again. I mean, how many comics? And I think this might make for an interesting podcast at some point. Discussion is, how many comics do you actually go back and read a second, third, or fourth time?
Not comics, but I definitely say that I'll pick up graphics that I've have, like the Infinity Gauntlet. I have it out. I've reread it. A Watchmen of Vendetta. Couple of my Howard the Duck Essentials. So stuff like that I do reread. But when it comes to my floppies, because they're in my boxes, they're out of sight, out of mind, and protected, I don't really reread floppies.
Yeah, well, that's a real collector. You're collecting those, but of all the comics you've ever bought, so no matter what the format, no matter what it's still in, whether it's digital or you might have it in 3 different formats. The original comic that you may never even have read, you just bagged it straight away, and then you read it when the trade came out.
Yeah.
But how many of those stories, no matter what the format, have you actually kept going back and reading and rereading?
No, not many at all. 100. Not many at all.
No, I have some I go back to, but not many.
I mean, personally, I think the biggest chance we have of comics surviving is getting to that point where Marvel and DC and Image and everybody just jumps on the Netflix bandwagon and just offers the comics at a subscription price, and you can read as much or as little as you every month. And the success of the comic book store would then be by selling the print version of the comic that you've just read. Like, wow, you go like, that was good. I actually want to own that. In the same way that if you look at the success of a lot of web comics, where they've been, there's been this comic running forever as a web comic, and they do a Kickstarter to get print copies out there. Like, hey, this comic we've been reading, we've been producing for a while, we're offering a print version. Some of those creators have had some of the biggest successes on Kickstarter because they've had such an audience, but they've been seeing it digitally. They actually want to own it as a print copy.
Yep.
So I think that's where the marriage between Marvel and DC getting into the more digital basis, where I know from a retailer point of view, if the digital version was much cheaper than the print version, they're upset that everyone's just going to gravitate to the digital and leave print behind.
Yep.
And that's a certain risk. But if you look at it on the other side, think if you open it up so that it now brings in people who we now get back to that stage of when we all read comics, when it was 50 cents for a comic book. And if we get back to that point again where you can read a ton of comics because it's that much cheaper, you're paying
affordable, yeah.
Well, if it is something like $15 a month for a read all you want subscription model, I would probably seriously consider, signing up and getting back into. I'll make another try at reading some more modern comics.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to for $5 a comic. They're just absolutely not worth it.
I get you. It's difficult, man. I mean, we work hard for our cash, so if we're gonna splurge on entertainment, it better be well worth it.
Yeah, and I think comics' origins were as a disposable entertainment. So
yep, disposable, exactly, cheap, low cost, but however, if you could date back to those, 60s, 70s, 80s, early 80s comics, I mean, there was so much content to read, so an individual issue wasn't taking you 15 minutes like a modern day comic. It was taking you a half hour, 45 minutes because it was rich in context. You know what I mean? A lot of story to be told, a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogue, something that's missing nowadays. I mean, again, it hurts me that I spend those $3-4 on a book and I read it in 15 minutes or less. I don't want to read a book that fast.
That's right, but are we still used to reading like that? Because whenever I go back to a 60s comic by Stan Lee, that is a lot of words, and it's a very different style than when you read from King Batman.
But guess what? You're into the story. You're eating up this history that's being made. You're getting into these real conversations, so it feels like you're eating up real content. Now your money's worth it. But now, come on. I read it too fast. I get annoyed. I have to reread it just to make me feel like I've accomplished something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know how you guys feel. I mean, if you buy and read on that level, because it's just, if it's 15 minutes or less, I shouldn't be paying more than $2.99. That's insane. I should be paying less.
That's difficult to say, Dave.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with Al on that point. I think that's kind of like between the quality dropping, the fact that it's you actually have publishers and even the creators themselves would, like, you buy the first issue of an arc by a new creative team, and they're telling you, oh, look, hey, stick with it for a couple of issues. It's worth it. It's worth the payoff. I'm going like, hold on. If I don't like the first couple of issues, why should I stick with it? Are you going to give me my money back if I don't like the payoff?
It's not going to happen.
No. I mean, will you give your check, like, as a writer? Hey, you, the guy who's writing Captain America right now or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you're telling me to stick with it. Well, what if I buy it and I don't like it? Will Marvel give me my money back? Will you give your money back to Marvel if no one reads it?
Let me tell you that I got one challenge like that in my life. When Valiant was reintroduced, I didn't know when I went to the new comic book day that year when Valiant was being reborn. I actually did meet the former owner of Valiant at the Rebirth, right? So I had mentioned on Twitter how I'm not sure if I want to give it a chance. The owner of Valiant says, I'll give you the Valiant challenge. Download the books, here are the links. If you do not enjoy the books that we're producing right now, I will personally reimburse you. So I said, all right, I'm going to take the challenge. I'm going to download the books from Comixology right now. And I'm going to read them. I never asked for my money back. All right. I took the
Good.
challenge, and because he stepped up like that, like he said, I'll put my money where my mouth is for you guys right now, and if you don't like it, I will refund your money.
Well,
And I
on
was
a
honest enough to say that I enjoyed it.
on a retailer level, that would be complete returnability.
What happened?
On a retailer level, that would be complete returnability.
Right? Exactly. I don't know how
That's
Valiant does that stuff, but because I'm not privy to that type of information. Maybe Dave knows more on that type of distribution levels within Diamond.
No, I don't know if, I mean, do they do returnability? I know they occasionally do. Like
I know
a lot,
some companies do. I don't know if they do.
well, some companies tend to do it on a, if they're doing a special promotion, if there's a particular new book, a particular arc, they will do something like hey, okay, look, what we're going to do is we're putting our money where our mouth is here. Order this, and if you don't like it, send it back. And I would imagine that like not many books are being ordered on the level where it's actually worth the retailer sending them back.
Yeah. Well, based on what you're saying, comics are hardly selling. So let's see what's going on, though. Hopefully that could change real soon as all these awesome movies come out, and hopefully people get intrigued enough to visit an LCS or a bookstore and either pick up a floppy or a graphic novel, whatever it may be. So over here, we already hit the 2-hour mark on this awesome conversation.
Yeah, I was going to the closing thoughts.
All right,
back
so
to the
Chris,
poll.
Chris,
Yep.
I don't want to. Last time I said that those words didn't sound right, so let me go very slowly so people don't understand what I'm saying. Chris, let's go to the polls and let me know what you think.
Okay, thank you very much, Al. Yeah, that was, first of all, thank you very much to all who participated in the poll. You got a 2-hour discussion out of it. Fantastic. Thanks for sending in all your comments. What are my closing thoughts before I hand it over to Al and Dave? Well, the poll went the way I thought it would go. I'm also a guy who loves the Bronze Age, Silver Age, and I would feel a pinch in my heart if I had to give up the newer books, because I love a lot of the newer stuff, even though I don't push them so hard, which I should do. I love Brubaker and a lot of newer books that come out. The new Green Lantern book is a great book you should check out. Fantastic art, fantastic story. So there are some very good books out there right now you should pick up and enjoy. But on the other hand, overall, I wish I could go to a comic store or Comixology and order 20, 30 books a week. I look at my pre-orders because I pre-order those books I want to have, and they're currently 5 or 6 books I get on a regular basis. I wish that were different. I wish I could buy more new great books. Because when I look at my shopping list from Comixology, I get about 20, 30 books a week, and there's 1 or 2 new books, and the rest are Silver Age, Bronze Age books they put up on Comixology. I wish that would change. I wish I would buy new books.
Yeah.
And the last time I bought like 20 or 30 books a week was when the New 52 happened. And a lot of people say, the New 52 was horrible.
No,
well, hindsight is 2020, but at least they tried something new. And I think if you want to get new readers and if you want to have engagement, try something new. And it's not the new number 1 on every 2 weeks on the same books. Do something new. Okay, that would be my closing thoughts. Al, you want to say something?
Yeah, because of those, you just mentioned New 52, and if whoever saw Shazam, that whole family that was introduced there with Pedro and all of them cats, guess what? They were introduced in the New 52.
Yeah, that's Jeff Jones and Gary Frank.
Yeah, introduced then. Absolutely. And just going with Chris, yeah, I would not let go of my pre-'89s. As much love as I have for certain after '90s, if you will. But the pre-'89s, man, it's just so much history that you could learn from, so many origins and new characters and development and growth that unfortunately in the '90s kind of they took a step back and tried to reintroduce to engage new readers for me. So I would never let go of my '89s, and I hope you guys do check out, your Comixologies, your Comic Central, your Drive-Through Comics, wherever it may be, so that way you could get a taste of pre-'89, whether it be Big Two, Premiere, or Indie. That's where it's at for me. Dave?
Yeah, I think going back to when we were talking about, we briefly touched on manga and the appeal of manga.
Great time.
I think what I feel is missing from comics is having a book that has a single voice. And the thing about manga is it's a creative team starts a book and that creative team ends that book.
Yeah.
And then they go on and do something else afterwards. They come to an end. That's the end of the storyline. It's done.
So rare nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that it's like, look, I look back and I've seen there's been, you look at Fantastic Four and there's, there was great run by John Byrne, great run by Mark Waid, but it's no one touched what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did.
Absolutely not, and we won't see that again.
No.
So it would be great if even Marvel was to, instead of having everything be part of this tightly knit universe, they relaxed a little bit and focused on, started doing more books where like trying new ideas by a creative team and allowing that creative team, if they no matter how successful it was, to be able to go, you know what, we've come to the end of the story, let's wrap it up. You can keep it in trades for as long as you want, but letting things lie.
Yeah,
I think, and because I think that would force people into being creative. That would force them into coming up with new ideas, and rather than just another take on Batman, another take on Superman, another take on Spider-Man.
Yeah, right.
We desperately need some fresh ideas and some fresh characters.
Yes,
I agree. And then go back and revisit the old characters from time to time. But I think that it's until that happens, until something else happens, I'm just going to stick with my my Jack Kirby comics, my Steve Ditko comics, Wally Woods, Jim Steranko's, and it is wonderfully creative right now, but it's like we're not playing to an audience, and we might have to make some sacrifices, but we need to find an audience again. And that's the most thing. That's what we need. So, and I think offering platforms like Marvel and DC's where it's it's a $10-15 a month, and you can read as many old and new comics as you possibly can get through. I think that might be one way, but they've got to direct. In that case, what they're going to have to do is all these movies are going to have to start with an ad for their websites to get people going to their sites to read those comics.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely there. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do here? What's gonna happen for the next show, guys? Hello?
Hello.
No,
Dave.
No, I think we've, we should do what we did here is, maybe we should actually ask the community to tell us what they want us to discuss.
Exactly, that was my idea. We make a couple of suggestions and poll them, and have some comments. Have some comments on the air. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I think that's, we can even pick, like, if people give us some ideas, we can string 2 or 3 of these together, so we can actually, we should be able to answer a lot of people's questions, and if there's things people want us to talk about, we'll try not to make it 2 hours next time.
Yeah, but this is fun though. Listen, I've seen podcasts that go on for 6 hours and get crazy hits. So we're not even touching on that, which is great. But it's true, folks. You know what, Dave? I want you to do the next poll.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
And then we'll reshare it all over the place. You do the next poll, and whatever you think should be the great next topic that the ICC should discuss. And then we're going to do our homework for you guys and definitely have this in-depth discussion like we did today. Chris, Dave, you guys are awesome as usual. Thank you so much for taking a time out of your day to chit-chat about this wonderful genre that we all love very much. And with that, this is Almega with Mr. Elliott, Mr. Buse on the International Comics Collective. Make sure to follow us on both Facebook and Twitter at International Comics Collective. You'll see the logo when you see it. Let me tell you, you won't be mistaken. All right. With that, hasta la próxima, guys. Good night.
Bye bye.
Yeah. This is an official Undercover Capes podcast. Thank you for listening to the ICC and Undercover Capes. Make sure to visit our website, undercovercapes.com, and also visit the International Comics Collective on Twitter.